Good afternoon, everyone. Matt Feldhouse here for another episode of Caffeine Connect, where we sip coffee and talk business. This is our monthly series where founders and business leaders share their stories, their insights, and expertise with our community, you guys. Our Patriot Bootcamp program is generously supported by T-Mobile, ESPN, and Veterans Debt Assistance. A big thanks to them for making this forum possible. Join us each month for real talk, actionable advice, and inspiration to fuel your business journey. Today, we are joined by Jill Morenz, a local business leader, a friend to DAV, and a mentor at Patriot Bootcamp. After my brief introduction, Jill will take the lead. I invite you to write any questions you have into the forum section, or you can post those on any of our socials, and we will make sure to save plenty of time for Q&A at the end. All right, let's get into it. With more than a dozen years of nonprofit experience and twice as long as an entrepreneur herself, Jill Morenz is a leading Aviator Accelerators into its 15th year.
Yeah.
I love that. Jill has created two businesses in her career and leverages those insights as the president and chief executive officer of Aviatra, as she works with women entrepreneurs to set them up for business success. Well, Jill, I'm so excited for you to share your time and expertise with us. And I know everyone listening is going to get so much to learn about their funding journey. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Nice.
And I'm going to share my screen.
And we can see it. Thanks, Jill.
Perfect. Thank you. So I want to talk about funding today. Obviously, that's what our topic is. This session is for business owners who are ready to take their business to the next level and they need outside funding to do that. So this is not for people who are seeking venture capital, though. So venture capital is a whole different thing. I'm going to talk a little more about that, but I'm not an expert at that. This is really more for the businesses that are not good fit for venture capital. So services, retail products, food and beverage, health and wellness, and tech. Certainly, if you're developing something that's tech related or tech enabled, but perhaps doesn't have the growth trajectory that a venture investor would look for. That's what we're going to talk about today. So I want to make sure we're all in the right room. Yes, raise your hand. Of course, I can't see you, so I'm just assuming you're raising your hand. So just a little bit more about the venture capital. There's a lot of moving parts with venture. There's the pre-seed, the Series A, seed, all of that stuff. And so I think you really need to be an expert to advise business owners on that. I am not that expert. So that's why we're not talking about that in this session. So as Matt said, I'm Jill with Aviator Accelerators. We focus on helping women entrepreneurs start their businesses, grow them, and get them funded. So when I started Aviatra, I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment, but I really am not, I'm not from the financing world. And so I really felt like an outsider. And I think because of that, I have some insights that I can share with you that you would not probably hear from somebody who has been in financing for most of their career. We do have a worksheet, and this is a QR code for the worksheet if you want to download that. So my promise today to you is you will understand more about using outside funding for your business, what you can use it for, why you might want to consider it. You'll also understand all the ways that you can fund your business and how to figure out which one is right for you. And then at the end, I'm going to share a valuable free tool that we developed that can help you. I just want to say, congratulations to you. Thank you for showing up. I know that there's a lot of people who intend to learn more about funding for their business and don't take action. So you are one of the action takers. So congratulations and thank you. So I want to take a moment and encourage you to think about why you started your business and now why you're considering funding. I think sometimes when we are thinking about get sort of revealing the inner workings of our business to somebody else, like a funder, there's a lot of feelings that happen, a lot of thoughts, and sometimes it's related to I need the funding. If I can't get the funding, is my business going to fail? And if my business fails, am I a failure? But of course, on the other side of that is the big opportunities to grow as big as you want and have that pride of being a business owner of a company that is built on your skills and your talents and your passions. So this is me 25 years ago when I first started my business, which was an interior design business. And this is my folder. I knew I wanted to open a store. So it was going to be this beautiful store where people could come in and buy lovely things for their homes and then work with me to, implement custom designs. And so I started this folder to capture all my ideas. So there's paint samples, wallpaper samples, fabric samples, things I tore out of magazines, my own ideas scribbled on notes, this whole big folder. But I knew that I could not afford to, open a store myself. I didn't have the money to pay the first and last month's rent, all the marketing, all the inventory that I was going to have. So I knew that I would need outside funding. So you know what I did? Nothing. I did nothing. I never tried to learn about funding for my business. So my store, my beautiful store, stayed just an idea in a folder in my filing cabinet. So this is not what I want for you, okay? When I started at Aviatra 3 years ago, I came across this statistic, which just absolutely made my jaw drop. So in 2022, which was the year I joined Aviatra, out of all the small business loans given to all the businesses in America, women-owned businesses received only 5% of them, despite at the time women owning 30% of the businesses in America. And now we own nearly half. And so I felt like this was my opportunity in Aviatra to do my part to change this statistic and help business owners like yourselves understand, your funding options and how to access that capital that you need to grow. So I convened what I call my capital advisory group, made up of people from all of these funding organizations. And so everything that I know about funding comes from these people and from the education that I've had since I, had my business where I did not have a store. So if I think about if I had known what I now, then what I know now about funding, my store might have actually become a reality. And so that's what I want for you to grow your business as big as you want, however you want. So what I want to start with is truths and myths about funding. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And so I wanted to address those. So the first one is, well, forget it. I can't get funding for my business. This, of course, was my thinking, right? When I was trying to thinking about starting my store. Well, I can't get funding. But here's the fact, the truth. Any business can get funding if they are properly prepared. It doesn't matter the kind of business. So another myth is I don't need outside money. So on the flip side, I don't need any money. I'm good. I do see people being very proud that they bootstrapped their business and never taken on any debt. And that is really great because it shows that they are creating something and selling something that people want. However, 82% of the businesses in America that go out of business every year do so because of not having enough cash, right? They don't have enough cash. And I think another thing to think about is when you are trying to bootstrap, you often unintentionally restrict your growth. So you're playing smaller than you need to. So an example is these two women that came through our program at Aviatra, and they had a camper van business. So they had one camper van that they had bought and retrofitted the inside so it would be a camper. And then they rented it out. So this was very cool business. But they only had the one camper van and they couldn't really afford to do this to get, a fleet of camper vans. So they ended up getting a loan to buy 3 more and retrofitting those. And then their business exploded because now they had obviously 4 vans instead of just one. And they were able to pay back the loan relatively quickly because now they had, every week all of their vans were rented. Another story, so there's a woman who owns a gelato shop and she does not want to grow past her one location. But she was thinking like, what about all the street festivals and the fairs, like, summer fair and that sort of thing. I could sell gelato there. So she wanted to get a freezer cart, like an ice cream cart that she could take to the street fairs and festivals. And so she got a grant to buy that. And now, of course, she's still sells gelato at her brick and mortar, but she also can take gelato to where the people are at these festivals, growing her business. And another example from our alumni, there's a woman who traveled to Italy and fell in love with all the different flavors of olive oil. So she came home and started a business called The Spicy Olive. She has 3 brick and mortar locations now in the Cincinnati area. And her first holiday season, she opened the store in the spring. And her first holiday season, she really wanted to go big because she was getting a lot of attention in the neighborhood, in the community, about her store. So she took out a line of credit and borrowed money to buy inventory. And she had a huge successful holiday season, which she would not have been able to have if she had not been able to borrow the money. If she had just taken the money out of her savings, she couldn't have afforded the amount of inventory that she was able to afford by borrowing. And then she had such a successful selling season that she was able to pay it back pretty quickly. So this myth, I don't need outside money. And if you don't, that's fine. Although if you're here, you might be thinking about it. But the truth is, it really makes sense to consider at least leveraging someone else's money to grow your business. So maybe give that some thought. How would you use outside money to grow your business in a way that would let you, pay that money back? So another myth is we've got some people saying I don't need any money and some people saying, well, money will solve all of my problems. Unfortunately, that is not true. You do need a strong business to succeed. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce identified 5 characteristics of a successful business, and none of them talks about the funding and the money. So that's something to think about for sure. And then the myth that the only thing that matters are my financials, right? We know we have to have strong financials or a funder is not going to even look at us, but you also have to consider your story. Your story matters too. There was a woman who presented to the sharks on Shark Tank, and she sold baby moccasins, like moccasins for little babies and toddlers, because it's easier for children to learn to walk if they have kind of a soft-soled shoe like a moccasin. And the sharks were kind of bored, right? They weren't excited about this. They were just kind of checked out when they were listening to her talk about her moccasins. And then she told about summer before she bought her first inventory of moccasins, she needed money to do that. And she worked at a company which was a replacement. They made replacement windows. So her job all summer long was to work in this blazing hot warehouse, not air conditioned, and take the old window frames that people were replacing and knock out the glass so that they could put new glass in there. So she literally gave her blood for sure, sweat and tears to start this business. Well, after she shared that level of commitment that she had to getting her company started, the sharks started paying attention and she got invested. She got an investment from one of the sharks and she's still in business today. So just thinking through your own story, what would you talk about to highlight the commitment that you have to your business? And then the last myth I'm going to talk about is I might as well not even try. Jill, you have made it seem too much trouble. Forget it. I'm done. I'm not even going to try. This is what I would say to that. Don't be me. Okay. Don't be me. I'm sure you have heard the quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That was me. I didn't even take my shot. And I want to just kind of talk briefly about the costs of playing small. There's difference between being smart and playing small, right? And so the cost of playing small, missed sales, like the olive oil lady, she would have missed all those sales if she hadn't had that inventory. Missed opportunities. I mean, going big, having bigger partnerships, bigger connections with influencers and, whoever else, bigger contracts, right? These are some missed opportunities if you're playing small. Missed family time. If you are pouring all of your money and your time into your business, you're missing out on a lot of things in your life, of course. And missing your goals and dreams. That was me playing small, not starting my store, and I missed out on a lot. So my encouragement to you is don't give up. Okay. Learn what you need to be doing so that you can play as big as you want. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I just want to have you commit to yourself that you are not going to give up, and give yourself a little fist pump there. Matt, do we have any questions about that first section?
None so far, other than there was someone requesting that they weren't able to see that QR code in time. I don't know
Yes.
if there's a way that, we can go back to that for a quick second or something, but
Sure, great idea.
other than
Yep.
that, good to go. So if anyone, get ready, the QR code's
Right,
coming.
it's coming. And I can send the link too,
Okay, cool.
but here it is.
There it is, everyone. Take a quick photo. And again, we can share this stuff after, so you can stay focused on the presentation, but there it is. And that should be enough time for people to grab it.
Okay, great.
Cool.
I'm going
Thanks,
back to
Jill.
you got it. Thanks. Okay, so let's get into talking now about all the different ways that you can fund your business and details and which one might be right for you. So we're going to talk broadly about three categories that I call your money, free money, and leveraged money. So your money, and those are in quotes for a reason. Your money includes bootstrapping and family and friends. Free money is crowdfunding and grants. And leveraged money is investors and loans. So let me go deeper into each of those things. So your money, and it's in quotes because it's not necessarily your money, but it's not outside funding, really, in the traditional sense. So bootstrapping. So this is using your own money that you make from sale. Well, your own money that you put into the business, and then money that you make from selling whatever it is that you sell to fund your business. This is extremely common. 78% of new businesses use bootstrapping to get started. This is for you if you have some money to put into your business and you can make sales quickly. Some tips for bootstrapping, keep your startup costs as low as possible because it's coming out of your money that you're putting in there. So maybe don't get the most amazing storefront or signage or your uniform, right? Like maybe just start as thrifty as you can and then start selling as soon as you can to generate revenue. A lot of times we get caught up in it's got to be perfect before I launch, but while you're making it perfect, you're not making any money. So just get started as soon as you can. So the second category of your money is money from family and friends. So this is loans or gifts from people that you already know. 1/3 of new businesses have money from family or friends. So you're in good company if this is what you're planning, or if this is how you got started. So the benefits of this are flexible terms. You can probably negotiate whatever you and your family member or friend will agree upon. Credit score also, generally speaking, your uncle is not going to say, well, what's your credit score before I lend you some money? Often lower interest rates and often no collateral necessary. So some tips for this: really treat these conversations with your family members and your friends like a business meeting. They will really appreciate your professionalism because it will give them more confidence in you and your ability to, repay the money and make a success out of your business. Also come to that meeting prepared with some options like, well, we could do it like this, or we could do it like this. If you have a business plan, share that with them because that will, again, help them understand how you intend to pay them back, but also if it's a gift, how you intend to, use that money to grow your business. And that's why they're giving you the money in the first place. That's what they want. So this will help them feel like they are, that you're prepared and they're giving you money that is not going to go to waste. And then definitely always put whatever agreement you have in writing. Definitely do that. So this sort of type of funding is good for you if you have friends with money and you're willing to risk the relationship. And so, money, they always say money and friends don't mix. Well, if you treat it very professionally and you have it put in writing, it shouldn't really affect your friendship. But that is something to consider. Okay, so let's go to the category of free money. So the first one we're going to talk about is crowdfunding. So this is raising, many small amounts of money from a large number of people that all add up to the amount of money that you need. So there's a number of benefits. One is that typically the credit score is not relevant. Nobody asks you about your credit score. You do get the funding from multiple sources, which is also great. It gives you like this feeling of support, which it is, broader support. Also, a lot of people find that when they have a campaign on a crowdfunding platform, it acts as marketing. So people are now aware of what they're doing. Even if they don't fully get their funding, people still now know about what they're doing. And, you can make sales that way. And you also avoid bank fees. All the platforms do charge some kind of fee, but it's not interest. It's just a fee. So some of the platforms that you might have heard of, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, GoFundMe, Wonderfund, and Kiva. So Kickstarter and Indiegogo are more for-profit ideas that you want to bring to life. And so like I know there's popular ones are sometimes board games. So, a board game, let's say you love Dungeons and Dragons and you've created something kind of like that. And you think, well, I want to see if people would be interested in doing this before I pour the money into making it. So that's a typical type of campaign on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. GoFundMe is more for personal causes. So you might have seen things like, my dad needs an operation and doesn't have any insurance. Can you help me raise money for his operation? Another difference between Kickstarter and Indiegogo and GoFundMe, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, you set your goal, your fundraising goal, and if you don't reach it, you don't get any of the money. So even if you come really, really close, you don't get any of the money. So your backers don't have to pay anything and you don't get it. GoFundMe, you'll get every dollar that is pledged less their fee. So you don't have to reach your goal on GoFundMe. But again, it's not really for businesses. It's really more for like those personal causes. Wonderfund is a crowdsourced debt or equity funding platform. So they definitely are looking for high growth potential, but not necessarily the same type as like a venture capital investor would look for. And then Kiva it started out as a platform to help raise money for third world businesses. You would buy a woman a sewing machine, and then she would be able to have a sustainable business and hire other people from the village. And, so it was very micro loans. And now it is global and it's still small dollar amounts, but potential there. And it is a loan, but there's no interest. So you do have to pay it back, but it's no interest and it's crowdfunded. So it's kind of a blend of some of these other ones. So tips. So generally speaking, for platforms like Kickstarter, you have different levels. So if somebody gives you $100, you're going to reward them with a t-shirt. And if somebody gives you $200, you're going to reward them with a t-shirt and a ball cap, right? So you have different, depending on what your business is and what your idea is, different levels that encourage and reward people, giving you their money. Another tip is to share your campaign widely. Share it as much as you possibly can, because it's dependent on an algorithm. There's so many campaigns on these platforms that it's much like an algorithm. If you get really like a social media one, if you get a lot of attention early on, you'll be, shown, your algorithm will favor you and you'll get shown to more people. If you kind of stagnate, it gets buried. Your campaign gets buried. There are, in fact, even services that help you work with you to create like really professional videos and have a campaign strategy for your campaigns. So of course, that's additional money, right? So that's why I say crowdfunding falls into free with quotes because you have to pay for those rewards that you give. And sometimes you pay for a service to make your campaign better. And again, that's very competitive. Those platforms are very competitive. So that's why professional video really does make a difference. So crowdfunding is for you if you're a good fit for the platform that interests you. And you can, of course, research them more deeply than I've just shared. So then the second category of free money is grants. So grants are money given by an organization, the grantor, for a specific purpose. So the benefits, you don't have to repay this money. This is a grant, it's a gift to you. And it may come with extra support. So sometimes grants come with additional coaching or, maybe a free, like I know GoDaddy had one where they would help you they would give you a free website. And then, you can use the development tools there free of charge to build that website. So the challenges for-profit, most grantors want to give to a nonprofit because there's a tax advantage to doing that. So it's harder to find grants for-profit businesses. The applications can be somewhat complex. They're not, don't let that scare you. You just have to kind of work at it. They typically, there's character limits and that sort of thing. And here's the thing though, sometimes when you find a grant that you think you might qualify for, you have to kind of tailor what you were going to do so that it aligns with what the grantor wants to do. So you have to just kind of weigh in your own mind whether changing and shifting your business a little bit to match the grantor makes sense for you or whether that does not make sense for you. So tips for grants: search regularly. Just, maybe once a month, do a search for grants and do it a couple of different ways. So maybe grants for businesses in your state, grants for businesses in your industry. If you're a minority, obviously veteran, that's a great one. Grants for veteran-owned businesses, women-owned also. And just kind of keep searching because these things pop up as businesses decide that they want to help and other nonprofits decide that they want to help business owners. So just have it, just have it built into your calendar to do these searches and have a spreadsheet that tracks them because you want to know, the link to the application, what the grantor cares about, what are the funding priorities, what are the deadlines, that kind of thing. You want to be able to track all of that. Definitely you're going to need some time to write the application, usually more than a couple hours. And consider working with a grant writer. They're very, very familiar with how to do this, but you'd have to pay them. And it's not a fee for, like, you can't do it like, if I get the grant, then I'll pay you. That's not how it works. You have to come out, you have to give them the money, whether or not you get the grant. But you should definitely try without a grant writer first. It's the types of grants that you'll be going for, I think, will be very user-friendly. The applications will be user-friendly. So grants are for you if you find a relevant grant and you have time to apply. Also, you have to build in time to submit a report as well. Typically, grants want to know what you want to use the money for, and then they give you the grant, and then they want to know how you use the money. And then they'll celebrate you. They just want to make sure that they, gave you the money and it went to a good purpose. Okay, so we talked about your money and free money. Now we're going to talk about leveraged money. So this is outside money that is used to make a greater profit, make a greater profit than the money costs you. So you have to, when you're borrowing from somebody else, you're getting money from somebody else in this way, you're either paying interest on it or you're giving a piece of your business. That's equity, right? Some percentage of your business. And so the idea, of course, the calculation that you have to make is this money going to help me make more money than it costs me? So again, equity and debt, those are the two types of money, of funding in this category. So I want to talk, and equity, again, that's a piece of your business. So I want to talk a moment about the Funders Balancing Act, because sometimes it gets frustrating for the small business owner to understand, I'm sure you've heard like you have to have money to get money, right? But you have to think about from the funder's perspective, their purpose is, whether they're an investor or a lender, their purpose of their work is to make money, right? But in order to do that, they have to take some risk in your business. And so they're constantly trying to balance that. So they want to minimize the risk and maximize the amount of money that they're going to make. And I think keeping that in mind is helpful, because once you know, just like with your customers, right? Once you understand what your customers want, you can give it to them. Similar with the funders. Once you understand what they want and what they care about, you can give it to them. So let's talk about investors. So this is money given to a business in exchange for some percentage of ownership in the business. So if you think of your business as 100%, let's just say, okay, I have 100 shares. So every share is 1% of my business. So if somebody said, I will give you $5,000 for 10% of your business, well, that's a calculation. You have to decide whether or not that's worth it. So the benefits to working with an investor are, they don't necessarily care about credit scores. I've talked to many investors, and they really don't see that a bad credit score as a character flaw necessarily. It's very validating to work with an investor, because you have somebody else who's pretty financially savvy believing in your business, and that is very validating. Also, they can have flexible terms. So sometimes the investors have very fixed terms, very like it's this or it's nothing. But a lot of times you can work with them and make sure that the terms aren't really, really hard for you. Again, that's that calculation. Is it worth it for you? But when you can come to an agreement, it's wonderful. And oftentimes the investor will give you additional coaching and like actually want to help you grow your business. So they, obviously they want to help you grow your business. They want to make money off of you. So they'll offer advice and support and feedback and connections and that kind of thing. So your goal, kind of as I said, is to leverage the money that you get from the investor to make way more than you would have if you hadn't gotten that money. So even though you don't any longer own 100% of the company, you still hope to make a lot more than you would have otherwise if you're just growing it by bootstrapping. So that's the calculation you need to make. The investor's goal, of course, is to help you grow a profitable business that will give them back more than they originally invested. So it's to everybody's benefit to have your business grow. You just have to make sure that you get what you need and the investor gets what they need. So the challenges are, sometimes there's debt investors. So there's equity or debt. Sometimes they just give it to you as a loan, which is great because an investor loan is often easier to get than a bank loan. Sometimes it depends, but so they will either get their money back by having you repay with interest or selling your business. So if they own a part of your business, that doesn't mean anything to them until you sell your business. So that is definitely their goal for you. If you have an equity investor, is for you to grow your business quickly and dramatically and then sell. So if you are not interested in doing that, you might want to rethink whether an investor is a good fit for you. It's also difficult to get investors when you don't have that high growth potential, because they're just like, why would I give you my money? I can make more in the stock market. So tips for talking to an investor: be ready. Know your money, know your financials, know how you're going to use the money, know what your terms could be. I mean, you don't have to go in like a super expert. It's okay if you're a beginner, but have you with a beginner in conversations with an investor, but boy, you need to have your business financials really tight. You just really need to show how they're going to make money and how you're going to make money and how they're going to help you make money. So you're going to need a pitch and a pitch deck. Usually investors like to kind of see, a pitch, like kind of a regular, they see so many pitches. They're used to that kind of format. You can work with organizations locally here in Cincinnati. We have an organization called Queen City Angels. So you could probably, so there's, broadly speaking, there's investors that are venture capital, and then there's angel investors. So a person has to make a certain amount of money, have a certain net worth to qualify legally to be an angel investor, and then they can invest in businesses like yours. And so kind of think through in your location, where are the angel investors? So investors are for you if you have high growth potential and you're willing to eventually sell your business so that the investor, can recoup their investment. And then the last type of funding we're going to talk about is loans. So loans are money given to a business that must be paid back with interest. You are in a very good company if you consider a loan. 43% of businesses applied for loans in 2020. So I want to go just a little bit deeper into loans and what you can use the money for. So like our spicy olive oil purveyor did, she bought supplies and materials. So that's something that you can spend a loan on, buying the supplies that you need, that is, when you sell them, going to make enough money back so that you can have extra money and to pay the loan back. You can also use loans for buying equipment. Lenders love that because they can always repossess your equipment, right, as collateral. Marketing and salaries. So that's usually called working capital. So when you hear that phrase, when you're talking to a lender, that's the kind of thing, marketing and salaries. Tech upgrades that will help you grow, not just tech upgrades for the sake of having the coolest, latest thing, but things that will help you grow. Inventory. And building your business credit. When you first start your business credit is the same thing as your credit. That's why personal credit scores matter to lenders, because they just look at you, and that's one of the only ways they can tell, since your business is new, only one of the ways that they can judge whether or not you're a good risk for their money is your credit score. So once you have a loan in your business's name, that's starting to build your business credit, which makes it easier to get funding in the future. That's less dependent on your personal credit. So the benefits of loans. So they're great for small businesses. People do, bankers, funders do loans all day, every day. They can be used for so many things, like I mentioned. And government programs like SBA can help make it easier to get a loan. So the SBA, sometimes you hear you hear about SBA loans, and you might think that that means that the SBA, which is the Small Business Administration, a federal agency, gives the money. That is not actually true. What they do is they reduce the risk for the banks. So they guarantee a percentage of the money, 70 to 80% often, so that the bank is really only risking that 20%. And then usually the bank asks you to come with 15 to 20%. So the bank is now risking this small amount, even though they have to pay you the cash. So the money has to come out of their money, their coffers, but their risk is dramatically reduced with SBAs, and of course with the capital that you bring to the loan. Challenges with loans. Credit score is so important, as I mentioned. The process is not usually very quick. I think probably the soonest you could expect to get money is maybe 30 days, and that's pretty quick. The application materials, banks are just, especially they're so risk averse, as I said. So they want all kinds of things. They want your 2 to 3 years of tax returns and all of your any orders that you have, like POs that you have, that somebody ordered your stuff and you need the money to buy the materials to make it, to fulfill the order. They want to see that. So the packet is a lot of work to assemble. And then meetings can be intimidating. I know that for sure. But they don't have to be. I think if you just, come to it with an open mind and the confidence in your own business knowledge, you'll be great. So loans are for you if you have a strong business with good projected income. And sometimes you can get loans even before your business starts, just based on your projections. So it's basically, does the bank believe that you have the possibility to, make good money with this business even before you start? So that's a possibility too. But your personal credit is critical on that situation because you have nothing to show for your business yet because it hasn't started yet. So let's just review what we talked about today. So you can get funding if you're properly prepared. I want you to know that. You should not give up. Don't be me. And there is a roadmap for you. There is a way for you to get funding. So I want to share the next step. This is the free tool I mentioned. So we developed this assessment called the Free Fundability Assessment. And this QR code will follow on several slides. So I want to just kind of tell you what the assessment is. So I enlisted all of these people in my capital advisory group to create the assessment. The assessment is questions about your business and about you that relate to what funders care about. And that will help you understand how close to being funder ready you are. So you put in your information, take the assessment, and then you get a fundability score, which then comes with resources and your next best step. So here is that QR code again. And it's on the last slide as well. And so I just want to encourage you, buy those camper vans, get that freezer, buy the olive oil and vinegars that you want, right? This is how you grow your business. And the best part about it, of course, is you don't have to do it alone. You've got Patriot Bootcamp, you've got Aviatra, you've got the SBDC, you've got SCORE. So many people want you to succeed. And I would love to take questions if anybody has them.
Okay, so before people chime in, I have a couple questions that have come in through some of the socials and stuff. So one of them, and I'll try and make this a little more broad scope, but if someone owns a store and they've had it for about 2 years and they're looking to help with their increasing their inventory, is there any specific of the funding channels that you spoke to that you would recommend specifically for inventory? So that's one question.
Yeah. So I would probably first ask if the manufacturer or wherever you're getting your inventory from has some kind of financing. That can be the easiest way to do it. Their underwriting isn't as strict as it would be for a bank. So I think that might be a really good first step. Secondly, I would really investigate with your bank getting a line of credit. So that's easier to get than a loan because it's you use it kind of like a credit card, except the interest rate is not anywhere near as high. So, with a credit card, you buy something and then you pay it off. And now you have that money available to buy again. So same with the line of credit. You have, let's say, a $20,000 line of credit. You borrow $10,000 off of it. You pay that back. You have $20,000 to borrow again. And so typically banks, it's an easier thing to qualify for. If you have your business bank account at a bank that's not really excited about doing lines of credit, you might want to consider switching banks because that's a really great first step for funding. Now, once you keep showing that you borrow the money, you pay it back, you borrow it, you pay it back, your credit rating is going to go up and it's going to be much easier for you to get funding in the future.
Nice. Thank you for that one. We have another one that actually someone chimed in saying that they have a similar story as well. So let's say someone's already bootstrapped, they've tapped their credit, and unfortunately that's, hurt their credit scores. How do you utilize a bank to give you a loan? Or would you suggest maybe a different strategy if those are the factors?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for a bank. It's one of those kind of catch-22 things where you really should be talking to your bank before you need the money. So it's hard when you have spent every dime and now you're coming to the bank and you're saying, I need money, because they're really worried about your ability to stay in business. So if they lend you money and all of your money is going to pay them back, then they're thinking to themselves, how are you paying your own mortgage and your own car loans and your own electricity and grocery bills? Banks know that you're going to pay that stuff first before you pay them. So you might default. So definitely, if you're not in this dire situation, talk to your bank first. At least try to talk about that line of credit that I mentioned. So now when you talk to a bank and they can understand if your credit score, I mean, there are funding resources that go down to as low as 640 with your credit score. You'll pay higher interest, but you can still get funding. If it's below that, you're just going to have to do some credit repair. Now, generally speaking, banks kind of want to talk to you if you're at like 670 or above. But if you aren't, I think it's worth a conversation with the business banker, perhaps at the bank where your business account is, because they can understand things, right? Like they get business, they understand how that works. And there are things called add backs. So you can add, like if you say, I spent my money here, they're saying like, well, you need to come to us with a loan where you're bringing 20% of the loan to the table. And you can say, well, but I've already spent that on this and this and this. And a lot of times they'll look at that as an add back, and they'll count that toward the percentage that you have to bring. So it's definitely worth a conversation. If you can't get your credit up enough and you just need some stopgap funding, I hate to say it, but credit cards are probably not a terrible solution there, as long as you're not overextending yourself. I think the key really is just the path. What is your path? If you get funding from anybody, what is your path to paying it back? And as long as you have a path and it feels reasonable to you, then, do whatever you need to do, just, in that regard. But if you don't have a path, I would encourage you to like rethink how your business is working, your business model. Because if you don't have a path to pay it back, don't take on debt, right? Don't take on that
Right.
debt. It's crippling.
I appreciate that, Jill. And we have another one. This one came from our Q&A section. So as a startup, what are some of the other forms of collateral that banks or other investors use as possible, for possible loan acceptance?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they'll use your house and they'll use your car. They'll use whatever you let them use, but you're putting it at some risk. It depends again on how strongly you feel about this path forward for your business. If you feel pretty good and you're putting, they might not take, if your let's say your house is worth 200,000 and you're borrowing 50,000, you're probably not going to lose your house if they have to, if you default. But if your house is worth 200,000 and you're borrowing 200,000, there's a real chance you could lose your house. So, these are always the calculations you have to make. But if you're buying something that is an asset, so some equipment or some real estate or a vehicle or inventory, that all counts as collateral, and they're usually happy to lend on that kind of thing.
I appreciate that. Now, this one's going to be a little bit more broad stroke, but you covered a bunch of different funding strategies, a bunch of different tools, which seem all very helpful. But how would a business owner figure out which of those funding strategies is the best fit for their personal circumstance?
Yeah.
Is there like a method for that?
Yeah, so that's called a funding stack. So again, not from the finance world, so I was really excited to hear this term when I first kind of started diving into this. So it's called a funding stack. So oftentimes, when you have a business, you have different things in your funding stack. You have your own money that you put in, you have money from sales, maybe you got a small grant, maybe you got a loan, right? And so there's this whole little stack about how you figure out how your funding is. And so I think it really begins with your path. What is your plan? What does your business plan show? Where are you now and where do you want to go? And what resources do you need to get there? And then it's looking really seriously at those resources that you need. If it's cash, is it cash because you are going to, like our spicy olive woman did? She bought the inventory and then sold it for more than she bought it for, right? And so then she was able to pay that back and kept the extra money. If that's your path, then that could be one of the pieces of your funding stack. If you have, if you find some grants, great, that are relevant for you, great. But I think it's helpful to think of this funding stack. So you don't have to have one giant loan to solve all your problems. You can, you can look at where you want to go and the pieces of your funding stack And so talking with a SBDC representative for your area, so that's the Small Business Development Centers, part of the SBA brand, the SBA is the federal agency, and the SBDC are local offices with counselors that will help you develop this, and it's all free.
No, that's awesome. That's great. And I know there was a question asked about resources specifically for veterans, and there are a lot of grants and resources specific for veterans. Um, you know, I Jill, if you want to cover some of those that you know of offhand, but I invited the person that asked the question is using online. We had Don Parks here not too long
Yeah,
ago. You can utilize ChatGPT, Meta AI, whatever your favorite resource to say, hey, I'm a veteran entrepreneur. I'm looking for veteran specific resources. And you can get a whole bunch of those. But
yeah.
are there any that often recommend?
So, well, some of the banks are really wanting to support veterans, and so they have specific loans. But in particular, I know of U.S. Bank and Huntington that have these loans that are for veterans and generally minorities and women also, where the criteria is a little bit more relaxed, and they help you. Like there's more coaching, to be ready for it. So it's a little bit easier to get, and you get that additional help to be ready, assemble your funding pack, figure out what you really need, and how you can pay it back and all of that. So I would definitely look into those. And then yes, there's a lot of, well, there's definitely grants for veteran owned businesses, and other. So I think absolutely, Matt, like I would recommend just starting to search. I love ChatGPT. It's my best friend, and it tells me all kinds of really interesting, helpful information that you do have to double check, but it's a great starting place to find out what kind of resources are out there. Also, the SBDC coach or representative in your area can also really help you with that as well.
No, I love that. And there's another question, which I know Aviatra is specific to women entrepreneurs. Do you know of any local ones that are 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 open to where a male could join? That's an accelerator. Specifically, this person asking is also a veteran, which I shared. Patriotbootcamp.org. Great
Absolutely.
place to apply. Our next cohort, which I was going to announce this, but the registration is going to be an opening tomorrow. Our next one is in Myrtle Beach in February, 11th to 13th. So that could be maybe a great place depending on where you're at. If you haven't yet launched your business, maybe that isn't the right fit for Patriot Bootcamp yet. But do you know of any local organizations that help people kind of foster their ideation and get them to launch?
Local as into Cincinnati.
Yeah, or just the local within an hour radius, because
Mhm.
Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's in Cincinnati, there's an accelerator called Ocean, and that is a faith-based accelerator. So for Christians. I don't know very much about it, but that is an option. There's also Border, which works with minorities and women. There's we have, if you're in the very early stages, we have an online program called From Daydream to Launch that is for men and women. It's on demand, so it's a pre-recorded program, and you can find that at aviatra.org under our programs From Daydream to Launch, and that's just helping you explore your business idea and officially launch. So other accelerators, some of them are depending on what you do, what your industry is. So there's Centrifuge has an accelerator for venture capital potential businesses. And then Goldman Sachs has a program called 10,000 Small Businesses. And there are chapters of that all around the country. And that is typically for a business that is making at least $75,000 a year with 2 full-time equivalent employees. And it's free. There is, a competitive application process, but it's free, and it's a very strong program.
Wow, this is awesome. Jill, it's clear that not only are you passionate about this, knowledgeable, but you just know so many of the different resources and stuff. So we always love having you a part of Patriot Boot Camp and DAV as a whole. So thank you
Oh, thank you.
again for
Love it.
all the question or all the answers, all the information. Just it means so much to us and our community. Everyone watching, I announced it before, but just a reminder, registration is open tomorrow by 9 a.m. Eastern Time for our winter cohort. So you can find that at patriotbootcamp.org. Our next one, very exciting, is going to be in Myrtle Beach, February 11th to 13th, if you want to mark your calendars. If you're a mentor, that special day as well. Jill was one of them as well. Hopefully she can make it out there for this one. But that special day is on the 12th of there. And mark your calendars, our next Caffeine Connect is going to be with Dr. Ariel Jordan. It's going to be December 11th. And that is going to be about mental wellness for founders, something that, Jill and myself, big advocates of resiliency and mental health. So, very important one. Mark your calendars. You can follow us on our socials. Again, you'll see all these announcements. And thank you all for joining us today.